He thought a few missing bonus dollars would stay buried inside a spreadsheet nobody wanted to read. By the time internal audit finished with my archived exports, they had traced $238,000 through phantom house accounts, outside commissions, and tax forms with his fingerprints all over them. The same regional sales director who told me the bonus model was above my pay grade ended up sitting in a conference room while outside accountants opened a folder named after one of his fake customers. He looked straight at me when he realized where the clean copy had come from. Here's how a quarterly bonus pool that was short by $7,842 turned into the investigation that ended his career. Before we go any further, thank you for being here. Drop a comment and tell me where you're watching from, because I always like knowing where these stories travel. A quick note before I start. Some names and identifying details have been changed for storytelling, but the numbers, the pressure, and the feeling of sitting across from someone who thinks your job title makes you harmless are all very real. The conference room where it ended was called Magnolia, which was funny because our building was a beige box between a truck rental lot and a flooring warehouse. There was nothing Magnolia about it. The room had a laminate table, 6 rolling chairs that squeaked if you leaned back too far, and a wall-mounted screen that always took 3 tries to connect. That morning, the screen worked on the first try. I remember that because every other normal thing in my body had stopped working. My hands were folded in my lap. My mouth was dry. Across from me, Victor Morrow, our regional sales director, was drumming his pen against a yellow legal pad like he was the one running the meeting. He had walked in 10 minutes late, coffee in one hand, phone in the other, wearing the navy sport coat he saved for quarterly business reviews. He looked at the 2 outside accountants, looked at our internal audit director, then looked at me. His face did that little thing I had learned to read over the previous year. Half smile, half warning. "Lena," he said like we were surprised to see each other at a picnic. "Didn't realize this was turning into a group project." Nobody laughed, not even the people who normally laughed because his title made it safer. I didn't answer. I had spent too many months answering him. I had explained numbers he pretended not to understand, asked questions he buried, and sat in meetings where he made me sound like a clerk who had wandered into executive math by mistake. So that morning, I kept quiet and watched as the senior accountant clicked to a slide with 3 columns: approved bonus pool, paid bonus pool, variance. The first variance was small, then it wasn't. Then the next slide showed customer names I had never seen attached to deals I had reconciled myself. Then one of those names opened into a payment trail that pointed, not directly but clearly enough, toward a consulting entity registered to Victor's brother-in-law. That was the moment his pen stopped moving. But to understand why that mattered, and why he did not know I had the only clean copy of the numbers, I have to go back 9 months, to a Tuesday morning when all I wanted was to close March commissions and get home before my father's physical therapy appointment. I was 32 then, and my job title was Sales Operations Analyst, which sounds more impressive than it felt on most days. I worked for Hartwell Office Supply, a mid-sized distributor that sold office furniture, janitorial products, break room supplies, and whatever else regional businesses ordered by the pallet. We weren't a glamorous tech company. We were the company that delivered 40 cases of paper towels to a hospital loading dock at 6:15 in the morning because someone in procurement had marked it urgent. I liked the work anyway. There was something satisfying about taking a month of messy sales data and making it tell the truth. Every rep had a territory. Every deal had a gross margin. Every account had a code. The commission plan looked like a monster from the outside, but once you learned how the pieces fit, it had rules. New business paid one rate. Retained business paid another. Strategic accounts had caps. House accounts went into the branch pool. Quarterly bonuses came out of a formula that nobody liked, but everybody accepted because at least it was written down. My little corner of that system was reconciliation. On the fifth business day after month end, I pulled exports from our CRM, our accounting platform, and the commission calculator that corporate had bought from a vendor in 2014 and never updated. I compared sales credit to paid invoices. I flagged split deals. I checked that returns had been deducted. Then I prepared the spreadsheets that went to payroll and to Victor for approval. That last part mattered. Victor did not calculate the pool. He approved it. He signed the payout summary, added his comments, and sent it to payroll with the little flourish of someone who wanted everyone to know the money moved because he allowed it. He had been at Hartwell for 11 years and regional director for 3. He ran 3 branches across 2 states, about 40 sales reps total, plus support staff like me, who sat close enough to the sales team to hear everything, but not high enough to have anyone's protection. Victor had the voice of a morning radio host and the manners of someone who treated politeness as a thing he gave to people who had earned it. In front of executives, he was warm. In front of warehouse staff, he was busy. In front of analysts, he was impatient. The first week I worked under him, he leaned over my desk while I was matching a credit memo and said, "You're detail people. That's good. Every office needs detail people. Just don't mistake detail for strategy." I smiled because I was new. I wrote the sentence down later because I am exactly the kind of person who writes sentences down. That was my habit. I kept notes. Not dramatic notes, not secret diary stuff, just work notes. If a report ran at 9:12 a.m., I saved a copy. If a manager approved an adjustment by email, I exported it. If payroll asked why a rep's commission changed after close, I wanted to be able to answer without trusting my memory. My father had been a municipal bookkeeper for 27 years, and his favorite sentence when I was growing up was, "Memory is what people use when the file is missing." He said it while labeling boxes, while balancing his checkbook, while teaching me to keep receipts for car repairs. At Hartwell, that habit made me look obsessive. I knew that. My desktop folders were named by year, month, and export source. I had a local encrypted drive backed up to a company-approved archive folder. I kept the raw exports, the cleaned versions, the final versions, and the approval packets. Nobody asked me to. Nobody told me not to. It was just how I slept at night. At home, sleep was already hard enough. My father had taken a fall the previous winter, and while he was healing, I was driving him to appointments twice a week. My younger sister lived 2 states away with a toddler and another baby coming, so the local things fell to me. I didn't resent it. Dad had raised us after my mother died, and showing up for him was not a question, but it meant I guarded my hours, I guarded my paycheck. And because Hartwell's bonus plan paid operations support a small quarterly share when the region hit target, I guarded those numbers too. The support bonus was not life-changing. In a good quarter, mine was between $1,200 and $1,800 before taxes. For a sales rep, that was a dinner with a customer and a golf shirt. For me, it was a month of physical therapy copays, a car insurance premium, and the difference between using savings or not. So when the March quarter closed and the pool looked short, I noticed. The first sign was a variance of $7,842. That number was sitting in cell H48 of the quarterly bonus reconciliation, and I stared at it for a full minute because it should not have been there. The approved branch bonus pool was calculated as 3.5% of eligible gross margin above threshold. I had the margin. I had the threshold. I had the exclusions. The pool should have been $64,910. The payout file Victor signed showed $57,068. Sometimes there were timing differences. A return landed late. A strategic account cap kicked in. A customer payment missed the cutoff. I checked all of that before I bothered anyone, Because the fastest way to lose credibility in sales operations is to raise your hand before you've checked the boring explanations. I ran the report again. I pulled invoices by customer. I checked the commission calculator logs. I compared the payout summary to the approval memo. Same gap. At 10:37 a.m., I sent Victor an email. It was polite. Painfully polite, looking back. Hi, Victor. I'm reconciling Q1 support and sales bonus payouts and seeing a $7,842 variance between calculated pool and approved payout file. Can you confirm whether there was an adjustment after the final export? I don't see an approved deduction in the packet. Thanks, Lena. I copied my manager, Priya, who supervised sales operations for our branch, but reported indirectly into Victor's region. Priya was careful, bright, and tired in the way managers get tired when they spend their days translating executive moods into tasks for everyone else. She replied privately 5 minutes later. Good catch. Let me know what he says. Victor did not answer that day, or the next. On Friday, I saw that he had forwarded my message to his executive assistant with only 2 words above it. Handle this. His assistant, Marcy, was not responsible for the bonus formula. Marcy scheduled travel and ordered lunches for regional meetings. She wrote back to me with, Victor says the final pool reflects regional adjustments. Please use the approved file. I asked, can you send the adjustment support for the file? I need it for audit backup. No response. Now, pay attention to that phrase, audit backup. It mattered later, because for months, Victor acted like I had invented the need for backup because I was nosy. I hadn't. Hartwell had a written retention policy. Payroll support documents had to be kept for 7 years. Commission approvals were included. The policy lived on page 14 of the Finance Procedures Manual that nobody read unless they had made the mistake of working in operations. I waited until Monday, then walked to Victor's office. His office was at the corner of the sales floor, glass on 2 sides, blinds always angled just enough that he could see out while pretending he couldn't be seen. He had a framed President's Club photo behind his desk from 2019, back when the company still flew top performers to Scottsdale. He was standing by the window, talking into his headset, so I waited outside with my folder against my chest. He saw me, held up one finger, finished his call, and waved me in without sitting down. What's up, Lena? Up. I had a question about the Q1 pool, I said. There is a variance between the calculated amount and the approved payout. Marcy said there were regional adjustments, but I don't have the support. He looked at the folder like it had made a smell. You already asked that. Right. I need the documentation for the reconciliation file. He smiled. Not friendly. More like he was amused by the size of the person interrupting him. The model is above your pay grade. I remember the heat in my face. Not because he insulted me. People insult analysts all the time, usually with more words. It was the way he said it with the office door open. 2 reps nearby went quiet. Marcy looked down at her keyboard. Victor let the silence sit long enough to make sure I knew it had landed. I'm not challenging the model, I said. I'm asking for the approved adjustment so the file ties. And I'm telling you it ties, because I approved it. Payroll support needs the backup. His smile disappeared. Lena, use the approved file. That's the instruction. That was the first off-ramp he rejected. If he had given me any reasonable explanation, even a messy one, I probably would have filed it and moved on. If he had said, we had a discretionary holdback and I'll send the memo, I would have hated it but accepted it. Instead, he made it about rank. He made it about who was allowed to ask. So I went back to my desk, saved the original exports again, saved the approved payout file again, and made a note in my reconciliation log. Q1 variance, 7,842. VM states model above pay grade, no support received. I did not know yet that the sentence I typed in irritation would become one of the first lines internal audit highlighted. For the next 2 weeks, life at the office kept moving in that strange way offices do when something is wrong, but nobody with power wants to stop the machine. Sales reps complained about their checks in low voices. Support staff compared deposits and tried to calculate whether taxes explain the difference. Priya told me to keep everything factual and not speculate. I did. Mostly. The loudest complaint came from a rep named Marcus Bell. Marcus was 41, a single dad with twin boys in middle school, and one of the few salespeople who treated operations like we were people, instead of vending machines for reports. He sold to local school districts, which meant his deals were slower but sticky. In Q1, he had landed a furniture refresh for a charter network, a deal everyone knew about because Victor had mentioned it in 3 different meetings as proof the region was executing at enterprise speed, whatever that meant. Marcus stopped by my desk the Thursday after bonus deposits hit. He had his phone in one hand and a folded payout statement in the other. "Tell me I'm reading this wrong," he said. I looked up. "I probably can't tell you anything until I see it." He handed me the statement. His quarterly bonus was $3,400 lower than the estimate I had run before close. Estimates were not guarantees. Every rep knew that. But $3,400 was not a rounding error. "Was there a return?" he asked. "Not that I saw." "Split credit?" "No." "Then where did it go?" That was the question I was not supposed to answer. I told him, "You need to ask Victor for the adjustment detail." Marcus laughed once. I did. He told me to stop treating a bonus like a paycheck. That sounded exactly like Victor. Bonuses were discretionary when employees asked about them and earned when Victor bragged about them to executives. I couldn't give Marcus confidential files. I couldn't tell him what I suspected. But I said, "Ask in writing. Use the words adjustment support. Copy Priya." He looked at me for a second. "Is there support?" I held his statement back out. "Ask in writing." He nodded, and for the first time since I found the variance, I felt the shape of the thing in front of me. It wasn't just my bonus. It wasn't even just the support pool. If Marcus was short, the sales pool was short too. And if the sales pool was short, the variance in my spreadsheet was only the part I could see. Victor responded to Marcus in 9 minutes. "Marcus, your payout was calculated under the approved regional plan. I don't have time to litigate estimates. Focus on Q2 pipeline." Marcus forwarded it to me with no message. I saved it in a folder I named Q1 questions. That was my second habit. If something felt off, I did not argue with it first. I organized it. The next month, Victor made the first move to cut me away from the numbers. It happened in our regular Monday operations meeting. Priya was at the head of the small conference table with her laptop open. I sat 2 seats down, next to Ben from pricing and Alicia from customer service. Victor joined on Teams from his office even though his office was 30 steps away. That was one of his little power moves. If he joined remotely, he could mute us, pretend not to hear, or leave whenever he wanted. Priya was reviewing month-end tasks when Victor interrupted. "For Q2, I want Marcy coordinating the commission packet directly with payroll. Lena can focus on CRM cleanup and, quote, hygiene." Priya paused. "Commission reconciliation has been with sales ops for years. And we've had years of people overcomplicating a simple process," Victor said. "I'm simplifying." I looked at Priya. She didn't look at me right away, which told me she had not known this was coming. "We still need reconciliation controls," she said. "Marcy can handle routing. Payroll has the final file. Lena doesn't need to be in the middle of it." There it was. Not a discussion. A reassignment delivered in front of my peers so objecting would look like defiance. I kept my voice even. "Do you still want me pulling the month-end exports?" Victor smiled at the camera. No. Let's reduce touchpoints. Reduce touchpoints. That became the official phrase. Not, lock Lena out because she asked why money is missing. Reduce touchpoints. Corporate language is amazing that way. You can make anything sound like process improvement if you remove the person from the sentence. After the meeting, Priya asked me to stay back. She closed the door. I don't like that, she said quietly. Neither do I. I'm going to ask finance whether they're comfortable with the change. In the meantime, don't push Victor directly. I already asked one question. I know, she said, and now he's making it about control. I wanted her to say she would stop him. She didn't. Priya had 2 kids, a mortgage, and a boss who liked Victor's revenue numbers. She was not cowardly. She was calculating what she could survive. I understood that, which did not make it easier. By Wednesday morning, my access to the commission calculator had been changed from analyst to read-only. By Thursday, read-only became no access. When I tried to log in, the screen showed a plain gray message, user role not authorized. I took a screenshot. Then I took another screenshot with the date and time visible. Then I emailed IT. Hi, my commission calculator access appears to have changed. Can you confirm whether this was intentional? IT replied, access removed per request from vMorrow. Please contact your manager with questions. I saved that too. At 4:18 that afternoon, Victor walked past my desk and tapped the top of my monitor with 2 fingers. See? Now you can stop worrying about things that aren't yours. He said it lightly, like a joke. Alicia heard it. Ben heard it. I heard the warning underneath it. That night, I sat in my car for 12 minutes before driving home. I had my key in the ignition and my phone in my hand, and I kept opening the folder where I stored my archived exports. Q1 raw CRM pull, Q1 invoice detail, Q1 commission calc output, approved payout, payroll file, email support. Screenshot of access removal. It was all there. Too much there. Honestly. Enough to make me feel responsible for doing something with it and afraid of what would happen if I did. My father called while I was still in the parking lot. You on your way? In a minute. You sound like your mother when she was about to tell somebody no. That made me laugh, which I needed. Work thing, I said. Money work thing or people work thing? Both. He was quiet for a second. Then he said, if it's both, keep copies. I looked at the office building through my windshield. Victor's window was lit. He was standing inside with his headset on, laughing at something. Already did, I said. What I didn't know yet was that my copies were only half the story. The other half was sitting in a file cabinet 2 floors above me, in the office of a retiring controller who had disliked Victor longer than I had worked there. Her name was Evelyn Ross. Everyone called her Ev, except Victor, who called her Evelyn, in the tone people use when they are trying to turn a name into a warning. She was 64, wore reading glasses on a chain, and had announced in January that she would retire at the end of summer after 38 years in accounting. If Hartwell had a memory, it was Ev. She knew which customers paid late because they were disorganized, and which paid late because they liked using vendors as free credit. She knew which branch managers padded forecasts. She knew where old policies lived on the shared drive because she had written half of them. Ev's office had banker boxes stacked against one wall and a candy dish full of peppermints that tasted like dust. I went there once a month to ask about odd adjustments, and she always gave me the same look over her glasses before answering. Tell me what you already checked, she would say. If I had checked enough, she helped me. If I hadn't, she sent me away. I respected that more than friendliness. After my access was removed, I stopped by her office under the excuse of asking about a credit memo. She listened, answered the credit memo question, then said, "That's not why you're here." I looked at the open doorway. She stood up, closed it, and sat back down. "Now," she said. "What did he do?" I told her carefully. I did not accuse Victor of stealing. I said the Q1 pool didn't tie. I said there was no support for the adjustment. I said I had been removed from the process after asking for backup. Ev's face did not change, but her fingers stopped moving on the calculator beside her keyboard. "How much?" "At least $7,842 in the support pool. Marcus Bell is short about $3,400 on his estimate, but I can't verify the sales pool now." "Estimates aren't payouts." "I know. But your file didn't tie." "No." She leaned back and looked at the ceiling tile above my head. "I've been waiting for someone younger to notice." My stomach tightened. "Notice what?" "I don't know yet. That's why I didn't say anything." That was Ev. Even when dropping a sentence like a brick through glass, she kept it precise. She opened a drawer and took out a thin manila folder. Inside were printed approval summaries from the previous 4 quarters. Each one had Victor's signature or electronic approval note. Each one showed an approved bonus pool. Each one had a payout total. Each one had a handwritten number in Ev's neat block print. Difference: Q2 previous year, 11,206. Q3 previous year, 9,774. Q4 previous year, 14,390. Q1 current year, 7,842. I felt a cold line move down my back. "Why didn't you report it?" I asked. She gave me a look that was not offended, just tired. "To whom?" I opened my mouth, then closed it. She said, "Finance asked him twice. He sent revised approvals twice. Both times the CFO accepted the explanation because the region beat revenue. I had variances, but not source data. Sales ops had source data." "I had source data," I said. "Exactly." She slid the folder toward me, then put her hand on top of it before I could take it. "Listen to me, Lena. Numbers are not enough if they can say you misunderstood the plan. You need approvals. You need exports. You need to show what changed, who changed it, and who benefited. If you go in with a feeling, he'll bury you. If you go in with a trail, he has to explain the trail." "He already wrote the narrative," I said. "I'm overstepping." "Then, don't overstep. Reconcile." She lifted her hand. I did not take the folder right away. There was a part of me that understood the second I touched it. I was not just annoyed anymore. I was involved. Not in office gossip. In evidence. Ev must have seen it on my face because her voice softened. "You can walk away," she said. "That is allowed. But don't delete anything just because someone with a bigger title told you it would be easier." That sentence hit harder than she probably meant it to. Because the truth was, the night before, I had almost done exactly that. I had gone home after Victor tapped my monitor, fed my father's old gray cat, reheated soup, and opened my laptop at the kitchen table. My archived folders were synced, tidy, and damning in a way that made my chest hurt. I selected the Q1 questions folder. My finger hovered over delete. I told myself I was being dramatic. I told myself maybe there was a legal discretionary adjustment I didn't understand. I told myself I needed health insurance more than I needed to be right. Then I thought about Marcus standing at my desk with his folded payout statement. I thought about Alicia, whose support bonus covered daycare late fees when her ex was late with child support. I thought about the warehouse lead, Jamal, who joked that the bonus was his daughter's braces fund, but never sounded like he was joking. And I thought about Victor saying the model was above my pay grade with the door open. I did not delete the folder, but I did close the laptop and cry in a way that made me angry at myself for crying. So in Ev's office, when she slid the approval logs across the desk, I took them. "Make copies," she said. "Bring those back by lunch." I scanned them at the copier by the break room, sent the PDFs to myself through the company scanner, and returned the originals in 19 minutes. Then I went back to my desk and began rebuilding the bonus pool from the outside in. That sounds cleaner than it felt. It was not one cinematic night of genius with dramatic music. It was weeks of ugly spreadsheet work after hours, before work, and sometimes during lunch with a granola bar balanced on my keyboard. It was VLOOKUP errors and mismatched customer IDs. It was realizing one export used billing customer numbers while another used ship-to numbers, because apparently consistency was illegal in our systems. It was me at 11:40 p.m. texting Marcus, "Do you remember whether the Charter One furniture deal had a split credit?" And him replying, "No split. I still have the signed plan if you need it." I did need it, not yet, but eventually. First I reconstructed Q1, then Q4, then Q3. I took the raw CRM exports I had saved before Victor removed my access and matched every closed won opportunity to invoice detail. I removed ineligible lines. I applied the thresholds from the written plan. I calculated the branch pool and individual sales credits. Then I compared my reconstructed totals to the approved payout summaries Ev had saved. The gaps lined up. They were not random. That was the part that made my skin prickle. If this had been incompetence, the variances would have been messy. 1 month too high, 1 month too low. A bad formula here, a missed return there. But the shortfalls clustered around high-margin deals and quarter-end adjustments. They appeared after Victor's approval step, not before. The pool calculated correctly, then money disappeared between approval and payout. I made a tab called Bridge. It showed calculated pool, approved pool, payroll payout, unexplained variance. I made another tab called Deal Trace. It listed the deals that moved. Marcus's Charter One deal was there. So were 3 facilities contracts, 2 furniture installs, and a large janitorial supply contract for a property management company called North Star Living. North Star was the first account that made me stop. I knew North Star. Everyone knew North Star. It was one of those customers that looked boring but printed money. They managed apartment complexes across the region, which meant recurring orders for trash liners, cleaning supplies, paper products, pest control items, and seasonal maintenance supplies. The account had been managed by a senior rep named Dana Ortiz for years. Dana was blunt, funny, and terrifyingly good at remembering customer preferences. If a property manager liked invoices grouped by building number, Dana remembered. If a maintenance supervisor only answered texts after 3 p.m., Dana remembered that too. In Q4, a portion of North Star's sales credit had been moved from Dana's account to a house account code I didn't recognize. House accounts were not automatically suspicious. They were used for national contracts, walk-in orders, accounts managed directly by the branch, and old customers without an assigned rep. But this code was new. H-7714. The description said, Regional Strategic Hold. That phrase meant nothing to me. I searched my archived customer master export. H-7714 had been created on October 3rd. Created by user VMORROW. Assigned owner, regional office, commission treatment, external referral, external referral. I stared at those 2 words until my eyes unfocused. External referral commissions were rare. They were supposed to be used when an outside broker or consultant brought Hartwell a customer under a written referral agreement. The payments did not run through normal employee payroll. They went through accounts payable, and sales ops usually did not touch them. If money was moved from an employee's commissionable account to an external referral account, the employee's pool could shrink, while the total deal still looked legitimate at a high level. I needed the vendor side. I did not have it. That was when Victor escalated again. On the second Friday in June, Priya called me into her office. Her face looked wrong before she said anything. There was a document on her desk, 1 page with Hartwell letterhead. She did not invite me to sit, which told me HR had told her how to stage it. "Lena," she said, "this is a formal coaching memo." My ears started ringing. The memo said I had repeatedly worked outside my assigned responsibilities by questioning approved regional compensation decisions, contacting sales employees about confidential payout matters, and retaining unauthorized copies of commission materials. It said further violations could result in disciplinary action up to and including termination. The phrase "unauthorized copies" made my vision narrow. "I retained payroll support under the document retention policy," I said. Priya's mouth tightened. "Victor says those files include materials outside your role after the process change. The files were created before the process change." I noted your objection. That meant HR was involved. That meant Priya had already argued what she could argue and lost. I read the memo again. My name looked strange in that font. Lena Harrow. Employee is expected to remain within assigned duties and direct all compensation-related inquiries to regional leadership. The words were calm. The threat underneath them was not. "Do you want me to sign it?" I asked. Signing acknowledges receipt, not agreement. Every HR sentence in the world comes with that trapdoor. I signed. Under my signature, I wrote, "Received with objection. Existing files retained under finance retention policy and created during assigned reconciliation duties." Priya looked at the sentence, then looked at me. For 1 second, I saw something like approval in her eyes. Then it was gone. When I returned to my desk, Victor was waiting. Not sitting. Waiting. Leaning against the edge of my cubicle wall with his arms crossed, making sure everyone could see him. "Tough morning?" he said. I put the memo in my bag. "I'm busy, Victor." "That's the thing, Lena. You're busy with the wrong stuff." I did not answer. He lowered his voice just enough that only I and maybe Alicia could hear. "Stay in your lane. This is the last friendly warning you're going to get." "Nee." Then, louder, he said, "Let's all get back to work." Like he had caught the office misbehaving. That was the lowest point. Not because of the write-up itself, although that was bad. It was the feeling that he had successfully turned the truth into a performance issue. I could have perfect spreadsheets, but he had the org chart. He had HR language. He had the ability to make me look unstable by forcing me to say more and more complicated things, while he said simple ones like approved and leadership and lane. That night, I drove to my father's house instead of my apartment. He was in his recliner with a heating pad on his knee and a baseball game muted on the TV. I put the coaching memo on the side table. He read it twice. My father reads slowly now because his eyes tire, but when he finished, he tapped the paper with one finger. "They used unauthorized." "I know." "Were they?" "No." "Can you prove that?" "Yes." He nodded. "Then don't argue about feelings. Argue about dates." That became my rule. Dates, sources, approvals, beneficiaries, nothing else. Over the next 3 weeks, I built a timeline. I did not call it evidence because the word made me feel like I was playing detective. I called it reconciliation support. That was true, and it helped me stay calm. The timeline started with the written bonus plan, then each raw export, then each approval, then each payout, then each variance. I added the access removal email. I added the coaching memo. I added Marcus's written request and Victor's response. I added Ev's approval logs. I added screenshots showing customer code H-7714 was created by Victor and marked external referral. Marcus became the corroborating witness almost by accident. One afternoon, he came to my desk with a paper cup of coffee from the cafe across the street. He set it down beside my keyboard. "You look like you haven't blinked since lunch," he said. "That's because Excel is a hostage situation." He smiled, but only for a second. I got another weird one. He handed me a printed commission statement for May. A school district reorder, small but clean, had been credited partly to a house account. The customer was in his territory. No split, no referral. He had the original quote with his name on it. Victor says regional support touched it, Marcus said. What does that even mean? It means he used words. Marcus leaned closer. Lena, is he taking money? I looked around. Alicia was on a call. Ben had headphones on. Victor's office blinds were open. I can't answer that. That's an answer. No, it isn't. It's me keeping my job. He nodded slowly, then pulled a folder from under his arm. Then don't answer. Just keep this. Inside were copies of his signed compensation plan, his Q1 estimate, his final payout, the Charter One deal documents, and 3 emails where he had asked Victor for support. In the last email, Victor had written, "Your inability to understand variable compensation does not create an emergency for leadership." I almost laughed because it was so perfectly him. Condescension with a subject line. Marcus, I can't promise anything. I'm not asking you to. My boys needed that money for summer camp. I had to tell them we were waiting until next year. So if anyone ever asks whether this was theoretical, tell them my kids know it wasn't. That stayed with me. Numbers are clean, consequences are not. A $3,400 shortfall on a spreadsheet is one thing. 2 12-year-olds being told no because a director wanted to skim a pool is another. The next rehook in the story came from a mistake Victor made because he thought I was already neutralized. He requested an account cleanup report from sales ops, and because Priya was out sick, the ticket landed with me. The report was not the commission calculator. It was CRM hygiene. That meant I still had access. The request was simple. Export all house accounts created in the previous 12 months with owner, creator, commission treatment, and linked vendor if any. I remember reading the ticket twice because I could not believe he had asked for it in writing. Maybe he forgot I still handled CRM cleanup. Maybe he assumed I wouldn't know what I was looking at. Maybe he had grown so used to people obeying him that he no longer recognized danger when he handed it to them. I ran the report. There were 26 house accounts created in the previous year. Most were normal. Old walk-ins, national account placeholders, customer merges. 5 were not normal. H7714, H7720, H7728, H7731, and H7744. All created or modified by Victor. All marked regional strategic hold. All tied to external referral treatment. All had sales volume that used to belong to active reps. The linked vendor field was blank in the CRM export, but one account had a note, referral per VJM consulting agreement. VJM. Victor James Morrow. I remember whispering, "Oh, you idiot," at my desk. Then I immediately felt sick because it could not be that simple. Nobody stealing commission dollars would name the consulting entity after their own initials. But arrogance is not the same as intelligence, and Victor's flaw had never been subtlety. It was contempt. He did not think the people below him could connect 2 fields in a report. I saved the export. I saved the ticket. I saved the timestamp showing I had run it as part of an assigned CRM cleanup task. Dates, sources, approvals, beneficiaries. I needed to know what VJM consulting was. I could not access accounts payable vendor records. I could not pull tax forms. I could not see bank details. So I did what any tired analyst does at 9:30 at night with a laptop and too much adrenaline. I searched public records. VJM Consulting LLC had been registered 18 months earlier. The registered agent was a small firm that handled hundreds of LLCs, which told me nothing. The business address was a mailbox store 20 minutes from our branch. The organizer listed on the state filing was not Victor. It was Caleb Rusk. I did not know Caleb Rusk. I searched LinkedIn. Nothing useful. I searched the county property records because my father taught me that people hide businesses badly and houses worse. Caleb Rusk co-owned a house with Marissa Morrow Rusk, Victor's sister. I sat back from my laptop and pressed both hands over my mouth. There are moments in a story where the air changes. Up to that point, part of me had still wondered whether this was a compensation dispute dressed up by my anxiety. Maybe Victor was hiding discretionary holdbacks to juice a regional metric. Maybe he was moving money around to favor certain reps. Bad, but internal. The LLC changed that. If commissions were being routed to an outside entity tied to his family, this was not just unfair. It was potentially embezzlement. It had tax implications. It had vendor fraud implications. It had the kind of implications that make companies stop worrying about office politics and start worrying about subpoenas. I did not sleep much that night. The next morning, Ev found me in the break room pouring coffee I did not want. "You look awful," she said. "Thank you." That wasn't concern. That was observation. I laughed despite myself. She nodded toward the hallway. "Walk with me." We walked past the copier, past the finance storage room, and into the stairwell because stairwells were the only place in our building where people did not linger unless something was on fire. I told her about the house accounts and VJM. I told her about Caleb Rusk. I told her I could not prove payments because I did not have AP access. Ev listened without interrupting. When I finished, she said, "Do not go to HR." That surprised me. Why? HR handles employee disputes. This is not an employee dispute anymore. This is money leaving the company. You go to internal audit. I don't know anyone in internal audit. I do. Of course she did. Ev had worked with Hartwell's audit director Nadine Cho, back when Nadine was a staff accountant who still used printed checklists. Nadine now reported to the audit committee of the board, which mattered because it meant she did not sit under Victor's chain or even entirely under the CFO. Ev made one phone call from her office with the door closed. 15 minutes later, she handed me a sticky note with an email address and 6 words. Use the hotline subject line format. The format was in the ethics policy. Confidential audit concern, compensation, and vendor payments. I had read the policy before. Everyone clicks through those training modules while eating lunch, but the words look different when your cursor is blinking in an email to internal audit. I wrote the email 3 times. The first version was too emotional. The second version was too long. The third version was the one I sent. I am submitting a confidential audit concern regarding regional bonus pool variances, post-approval payout changes, and possible external referral payments tied to house accounts created by regional leadership. I have source exports, approval logs, payout summaries, access change records, and employee corroboration. I am requesting guidance on secure transfer of supporting files. I attached nothing at first. That was Ev's advice. Make them open a case, she said. Then send through their channel. Nadine replied 42 minutes later. Do not forward documents by regular email. I am opening a restricted case file. You will receive upload instructions. Do not discuss this matter further with regional leadership. I read that sentence 3 times. Do not discuss this matter further with regional leadership. For the first time in months, someone with authority had told me not to talk to Victor, and it felt like oxygen. The upload portal arrived that afternoon. I uploaded everything in folders by quarter. I included a README file, which sounds ridiculous until you have ever handed someone a complicated workbook and watched them click the wrong tab. The README explained each source, date pulled, system, and purpose. I wrote in plain language. I did not say, Victor stole money. I said the documents showed unexplained variances after approval and potential routing of commissionable sales to external referral accounts tied to VJM Consulting LLC, whose organizer appeared connected to Victor through public records. Then I waited. Waiting is the part nobody tells you about. Revenge stories make documentation sound active because the protagonist is doing something, but after you hand the file to the right people, you do a lot of nothing. You go to work. You answer emails. You sit 3 rows away from a man who may have stolen from your coworkers and listen to him tell the sales team they need to own their outcomes. You wonder whether internal audit thinks you are a crank. You wonder whether Victor will find out. You wonder whether your name will show up in some meeting where people with better suits decide you are more trouble than the missing money. The first extra crack came from something small enough that I almost missed it. Nadine asked whether any of the house accounts had ever appeared on normal pipeline reports before they were marked as house accounts. That sounded like a simple question until I realized our standard monthly reports only showed current owner, not ownership history. Victor had counted on that too. If you opened the account today, it looked like the region owned it. You had to compare old exports to see who owned it before. Luckily, comparing old exports was basically my personal sport. I pulled the archived customer owner snapshots I had saved every month for routine territory cleanup. They were not commission files. They were not payout files. They were the boring reports managers asked for when a rep left, a zip code moved, or a customer got merged. I had saved them because territory cleanup always created arguments, and I preferred winning arguments with dates instead of volume. The snapshots showed that 4 of Victor's 5 suspicious house accounts had been active rep accounts first. North Star belonged to Dana until October 3rd. Charter One belonged to Marcus until January 12th. The facilities contract belonged to a rep named Owen until the day after he resigned. The janitorial renewal belonged to a woman named Felicia, who had transferred to another branch and had no idea one of her renewals was still paying out after she left. Each move happened within days of a large invoice or renewal. That gave Audit a new angle. It was not only that questionable vendor payments existed, it was that account ownership changed right before money moved. That sequence mattered. If Victor had truly created regional strategic accounts for legitimate reasons, the timing would have looked like planning. Instead, it looked like someone waiting until a rep had done the work, then moving the account before payout. Nadine asked me to annotate the ownership history in a separate file. I spent a Saturday morning at my father's kitchen table doing it while he worked a crossword and pretended not to watch me. Every time I found another ownership change, I marked the date, the user, the customer, the next invoice, and the referral payment if we knew one existed. At one point, Dad looked over and said, "That looks like a lot of arrows." It is. Arrows are good. People can argue with paragraphs. They have a harder time arguing with arrows. He was right. The finished file looked plain, almost childish. Account A moved on this date. Invoice posted on this date. Referral payment approved on this date. Employee payout reduced on this date. But that plainness made it powerful. It turned Victor's favorite defense, that the model was too complicated, into a problem for him. The complicated system had a simple rhythm once the dates were lined up. A second witness came from that ownership file, and she was not someone I expected. Felicia called me from the South Ridge branch after Nadine interviewed her. I had met her twice at trainings. She had a smoker's laugh, bright red nails, and the kind of voice that could cut through a bad conference call without raising volume. "Lena Harrow?" she said when I picked up. Speaking. "This is Felicia Grant. I hear you're the reason people are suddenly asking about my old accounts." My stomach dropped. "Felicia, I can't talk about an active review." "Relax. I'm calling to say thank you." I did not know what to do with that. She said, I left that region because Victor told everybody I couldn't keep enterprise business. Then he moved my renewal after I transferred and used the number in a regional brag deck. I thought I was losing my mind when I saw it. Turns out I was just being robbed politely. Robbed politely. I wrote that phrase in my notes after the call because it described the whole scheme better than any formal audit term. It was not a masked theft. It was a theft wearing a blazer, speaking in acronyms, and sending calendar invites. Felicia had kept a customer thank you email from the janitorial renewal because she had used it in her transfer packet. She sent it to Audit. The customer named her directly. That gave Claire one more outside confirmation that VJM had not introduced anything. The customers were not confused. The reps were not confused. The only confusion came from the person who benefited when everyone else was told to stop asking. That weekend, I did one more thing that made me feel both careful and ridiculous. I wrote a personal chronology from memory while the events were fresh, not accusations, just what happened. April 5th, export pulled. April 8th, variance identified. April 10th, Victor says model above pay grade. May 6th, process reassigned. May 9th, access removed. June 14th, coaching memo. June 17th, EV provides approval logs. July 2nd, audit hotline email. I wrote where I was standing, who else was nearby, and what documents existed for each point. I noted when something was direct memory and when it was supported by an email. That distinction mattered. The more serious the investigation became, the more I wanted to be able to say, this part is documented, this part is my recollection, and this part I do not know. It may sound strange, but that chronology calmed me down. Fear gets bigger when it floats around in your head. Dates put it on a leash. For 2 weeks, nothing happened. Actually, that is not true. Things happened, but quietly. Nadine sent 2 follow-up questions. One asked whether my archived exports were generated before or after Victor's approval step. I answered with timestamps and system logs. Another asked whether anyone else could corroborate expected payout differences. I asked Marcus if he was willing to speak confidentially with internal audit. He said yes before I finished the sentence. Use my name, he said. I'm tired of whispering. I told him to be careful. Lena, he already took the money. Careful didn't help. Marcus met with Nadine on a Thursday afternoon in a room usually used for vendor demos. He came out looking pale but steady. He did not tell me details, and I did not ask. That was part of staying clean. Need to know had protected Victor for months. Now it protected the investigation. Victor, meanwhile, got louder. He announced a new compensation communication protocol, requiring all payout questions to go through Marcy. He told reps in a team meeting that side-channel math was hurting morale. He stopped by my desk less, which was a relief, but when he did, he used my name too often. Lena, how's the quote cleanup? Lena, staying out of trouble? Lena, you wouldn't happen to be hoarding any more secret spreadsheets, would you? That last one he said with a smile while holding a cup of coffee. Alicia's head snapped up. Ben froze with one earbud halfway out. I looked at Victor and said, I retain assigned work product according to policy. His smile thinned. You rehearsed that? No. Sure sounds rehearsed. Maybe policy is just consistent. Alicia coughed into her hand. Victor looked at her, then back at me. Careful, he said. It was the second time he had said something like that. Stay in your lane. Careful. Last friendly warning. I saved each one in my notes with date, time, and witnesses, because by then I understood that intimidation was part of the pattern. Not separate from the money. Part of it. 3 days later, my company laptop was taken for a routine security review. IT showed up at 9:05 a.m. with a loaner laptop and an apologetic expression. The technician, Omar, was 26, and not good at pretending things were normal. "Hey Lena, I need to swap your machine. Security audit. Should only be a day or two." "Who requested it?" He looked at his tablet. Ticket says regional leadership." "Victor?" "It doesn't say." It absolutely said. He just did not want to say it. I handed over the laptop after making him give me the ticket number. My heart was pounding, but not for the reason Victor probably hoped. The files were already uploaded to internal audit. My local archive was company approved and synced. And because I am me, I had kept an index of every file name, hash, and export date. If someone deleted or altered files from my laptop after that date, it would create a new problem for them, not for me. Still, losing the machine felt invasive. That laptop had become the container for months of fear. Watching Omar carry it away made my chest tighten. At 10:12, Nadine called my cell. "Did it just remove your laptop?" "Yes." "Do not use the loaner for anything related to the case. We have your upload. I am preserving your original files through legal hold." "Legal hold?" She paused. "Yes." That was all she said, but the word landed like a door closing behind me. Legal hold meant this was no longer just an internal review. It meant counsel was involved. It meant documents could not be destroyed. It meant Victor's attempt to inspect or scare me had triggered a more formal process. What Victor didn't know, and what makes the next part work, is that by trying to isolate me, he had created one of the cleanest retaliation timelines internal audit could ask for. Friday afternoon, Nadine and a company attorney named Paul Reyes met with me in a small office near reception. Paul had the calmest voice I had ever heard from someone carrying a leather folder. He explained that the company had initiated a privileged investigation into compensation irregularities and vendor payment concerns. He asked me to walk through the timeline. He asked careful questions. Who had access when? When were files pulled? What did Victor say? Who witnessed it? Did I alter any exports? Did I have documents outside company systems? I answered everything as precisely as I could. When I didn't know, I said I didn't know. When I was guessing, I said I was guessing. Paul seemed to appreciate that more than certainty. At the end, he said, "You may experience changes in reporting or duties while this is ongoing. If anyone asks you about this investigation, directs you to destroy files, or comments on your participation, contact me and Nadine immediately." "Does Victor know?" I asked. Paul closed his folder. "He knows there is a review. He does not know its full scope." That was the first time I felt the trap beginning to exist outside my own spreadsheets. The following week, outside accountants arrived. They did not arrive dramatically. No badges, no raid. Just two people from a forensic accounting firm with rolling laptop bags and visitor stickers. One was a senior manager named Claire Mercer. The other was a younger analyst named Ethan, who looked like he had never met a spreadsheet he didn't want to interrogate. They set up in Magnolia, the same conference room where Victor would later unravel, and requested system exports from finance, CRM, payroll, and accounts payable. Requests are where investigations become real. You can ignore a question from an analyst. You can bully a rep. You can bury an email. You cannot casually ignore a forensic accounting data request copied to legal. Victor tried. His first tactic was charm. He walked into Magnolia with his coffee and said, "Folks, I hope nobody's making a mountain out of our messy little commission plan. Happy to translate sales reality for the finance crowd." Claire looked up from her laptop. "We'll ask if we need translation." I was not in the room for that exchange. Alicia heard it from the copier and reported it to me with the expression of someone bringing soup to an invalid. "She didn't smile," Alicia said. "Not even a little." Victor's second tactic was speed. He sent a region-wide email announcing that all commission questions would be paused during routine process review and that managers should maintain focus on revenue. He scheduled customer visits out of town for 3 straight days. He told Marcy to pull archived approval packets from the shared drive and clean up duplicates. Marcy, to her credit, froze. She had been Victor's assistant for 5 years, and she had enabled plenty of his arrogance because her job required making him happy. But she was not stupid. She forwarded the cleanup request to Priya and asked, "Are we supposed to delete older versions?" Priya forwarded it to Nadine. Within an hour, legal sent a preservation notice to Victor, Marcy, Priya, finance, sales ops, IT, and payroll. It was very dry. It said all documents, communications, exports, approvals, and files related to compensation, bonus pools, house accounts, external referrals, and vendor payments from the previous 5 fiscal years must be preserved. It listed examples. It included CRM records, emails, instant messages, spreadsheets, approval logs, vendor setup documents, invoices, payment records, tax forms, and handwritten notes. Handwritten notes? Ev came to my desk after reading it and said, "Well, that's new. Is that bad? For me? No. For him? Depends what he wrote down." The preservation notice changed the building. People read it, then looked around like the walls had shifted. The sales floor got quieter. Reps who had been joking about missing bonuses stopped joking. Marcy closed Victor's office door more often. Priya held her meetings in a lower voice. Victor kept smiling, but the smile began to look like something held in place by wire. Then the AP data came in. I did not see it directly at first. I was not part of the forensic team. I was a source, not an investigator. That boundary mattered, but Nadine asked me to clarify how external referral commissions should appear if they were legitimate. I explained the normal process: written referral agreement, vendor setup with W-9, deal registration, approval by finance, payment through AP, no impact on employee commission unless the plan explicitly carved it out. She asked whether VJM Consulting had ever been disclosed to Sales Ops as an approved referral partner. I said no. She asked whether regional directors could approve referral payments to entities connected to themselves or family members. I said I did not know the legal policy, but operationally, no one had ever told us that was allowed. Her face gave me nothing. 2 days later, Marcus texted me after work. "Dana just got called by Audit." Dana Ortiz, North Star's rep. I sat on the edge of my bed and stared at the message. North Star had been one of the house account shifts. If Audit was interviewing Dana, they were following the money account by account. Dana called me that night. I almost didn't answer because I did not want to contaminate anything, but she left a voicemail that said, "I'm not asking you about the investigation. I'm asking whether I'm crazy." I called back. She answered on the first ring. "Did North Star get moved?" I closed my eyes. "Dana, I can't discuss documents." "That's not what I asked. I asked whether the account I built for 6 years got moved." "Me. You need to talk to Audit." I did. They showed me invoices with a house code. Victor told me last year corporate was restructuring strategic accounts. He said I was still getting relationship credit. I trusted him. Her voice cracked on the last 3 words, and Dana did not strike me as someone who cracked often. "I'm sorry," I said. "He used my renewal deck," she said. "The one I built. He took my customer's volume, called it a strategic hold, and paid somebody else." Somebody else. VJM Consulting, if the pattern held. Dana became the second corroborating witness, and unlike Marcus, she had years of account history. She had emails from North Star property managers thanking her by name. She had calendar invites, renewal proposals, pricing approvals, and a text from Victor saying, Leave North Star classification to me. It is above rep level. Above rep level. Same song, different verse. The investigation widened after Dana. Outside accountants pulled 5 years of data, not just 4 quarters. That mattered because Victor had been regional director for 3 years and senior sales manager before that. They did not assume the scheme started when he got the title. They tested the whole period where he had influence over account coding and referral approvals. The pattern was ugly. It started small. One external referral payment here, a house account there. In the first year, maybe enough to feel like a perk if you were the kind of person who could steal a perk. Then the payments grew. More accounts moved. Larger deals got partial reclassification. The bonus pool shortfalls increased near quarters where Victor was under pressure to hit regional margin. He could make the region look disciplined by reducing payouts while still siphoning money through AP. Employees blamed the plan. Finance saw approved totals. Executives saw revenue. Victor saw a private stream. That was the part that made the outside accountants so interested. It was not just that employees had been shorted. It was that company funds had been paid to a vendor that may not have provided services, and the payments may have been reported as business expenses while effectively benefiting an employee's family. That meant payroll issues, vendor fraud, conflict of interest, potential tax reporting problems, and financial statement concerns. In other words, Victor had turned being greedy into a multidisciplinary event. The first visible consequence landed on a Monday. Victor's approval authority was suspended pending review. The email came from the CFO at 8:02 a.m. It said all regional compensation approvals, house account changes, and referral commission approvals would be routed through finance until further notice. It did not name the reason. It did not name Victor beyond saying regional directors would not approve their own regions during the review. But everyone knew. Victor came out of his office at 8:17 and walked straight to Priya's desk. "Did you know about this?" he asked. The sales floor went quiet in that exact way people pretend it hasn't. Priya looked up slowly. "Good morning to you too." "Did you know?" "I received the same email you did." "That's not an answer." "It's the answer I'm giving." He stared at her. Priya did not look away. I had never admired her more. Then Victor turned his head and looked at me. Not for long. Just a flick. But it was enough. A few minutes later, I got an email from him with no greeting. "Do not access, distribute, or discuss any compensation materials. Confirm receipt." I forwarded it to Nadine and Paul without replying. Paul responded, "Do not engage. We will handle." At 9:03, Victor received what I later learned was a legal instruction reminding him not to contact potential witnesses about investigation subject matter. He did not email me again. He did, however, try to corner Marcus in the parking lot. Marcus told me about it later. He was loading sample binders into his trunk when Victor walked up and said, "You need to be careful who you listen to. Some people are trying to turn normal compensation noise into a career opportunity." Marcus shut his trunk. "Are you telling me not to cooperate with Audit?" Victor blinked. "I'm telling you to be smart." "Can you put that in writing?" That was the Marcus version of a punch. Victor walked away. Marcus reported the interaction. By then, legal had the patience of a tired parent with a child who kept touching the stove. 2 days later, Victor was placed on administrative leave. The email was shorter this time. Regional leadership coverage would be handled by the VP of Sales and Finance. All inquiries should go to Priya for operations and to the interim sales lead for customer matters. Victor's office door was closed. His nameplate stayed on the wall for another week, which made the whole thing feel like a ghost story. People walked past it and lowered their voices. I expected to feel relief. I did, but it was not clean. Mostly, I felt exhausted. For months, Victor had been a pressure system in the building. When he was removed, the air changed so fast it made people dizzy. Reps started forwarding old payout questions to finance. Support staff compared bonus deposits more openly. Dana sent Audit a folder so organized I wanted to hug her through the screen. Marcy took 3 days off and came back with red eyes and a much straighter posture. Ev kept working like always. She was 3 weeks from retirement and suddenly more important than half the executives. Outside accountants loved her because she knew where the bodies were not buried, which is sometimes more useful. She found old referral approval forms in a 2021 archive box. She found a policy memo from 2018 requiring conflict disclosures for any vendor tied to an employee's family. She found a handwritten note from a previous CFO that said, "No regional self-approval on referral vendors." It had been written on a printed email and filed under vendor governance because Ev filed things like she expected the future to need them. The future did. At the same time, the company began recalculating payouts. That process was slower than anyone wanted because every corrected commission had tax implications. Payroll had to determine what should have been wages, what had been paid through AP, what needed amended reporting, and how to handle employees who had left. Outside accountants tested sample quarters, then full quarters, then full years. The number kept growing. First, the employee shortfall was around $64,000, then $112,000. Then, after they included sales reps who had left and support pools that had been shaved, it reached $176,000. The suspected improper vendor payments were higher. With fees and taxes and penalties, the exposure was well into 6 figures. The final internal number I heard before the conference room meeting was $238,000 in questioned payments and underpaid compensation over 3 years. That did not include investigation costs. It did not include amended tax filings. It did not include whatever the authorities might do. Yes, authorities. That part happened because of the tax issue. Once the outside accountants concluded that VJM Consulting had received payments without evidence of real referral services, and that those payments appeared connected to employee-managed accounts, the company had to decide whether to treat it as an internal policy violation or refer it out. The board's audit committee chose referral. State authorities for wage issues, tax authorities for reporting, local prosecutors for potential fraud. I was not in those meetings, but Paul told me enough to understand the door had opened and the company was not going to close it quietly. He said, "This is no longer only a personnel matter." I thought about Victor telling Marcus not to treat a bonus like a paycheck. I thought about Alicia calculating daycare. I thought about my father's co-pays. Personnel matters sounded too small for what he had touched. The day before the Magnolia meeting, Nadine asked me to review a summary for factual accuracy, not conclusions, facts, dates, sources, exports. I sat in a small room with her and Claire from the accounting firm while they walked through the reconstruction. Claire had built a flowchart. It started with customer invoice, then sales credit, then house account reclassification, then external referral approval, then AP vendor payment, then VJM Consulting. Next to each arrow was a date and a document source. It was beautiful in the way only a damning flowchart can be beautiful. "This export," Claire said, pointing to one of the first boxes, "is yours?" "Yes." Pulled April 5th at 7:42 a.m. before the Q1 payout file was modified. "And this approval log?" From Evelyn Ross. I scanned her copy on May 23rd. Originals are with finance. "This note, model above pay grade, is yours?" "Yes." Contemporaneous note from April 10th after conversation in Victor's office. She nodded. Contemporaneous notes make accountants happy. "That's the first time anyone has said that to me like it's a compliment." Nadine almost smiled. Then Claire clicked to a slide showing H7714. North Star Living. Created by Victor. Reclassified volume. Referral treatment. Payment to VJM. She clicked again. H-7720. Charter 1 Furniture. Partial reclassification. Payment to VJM. Again. H-7728. Facilities contract. Again. H-7731. Janitorial renewal. Again. H-7744. Maintenance supply program. Each slide was a little trapdoor under Victor's version of events. Will he be in the meeting? I asked. Nadine looked at Paul, who had joined silently halfway through. Paul said, "Yes. He is being given an opportunity to respond to the findings before final employment action. You may be present for portions related to your documents and retaliation complaint. You are not required to speak unless asked." Does he know I'll be there? He will when he arrives. I slept maybe 2 hours that night. The morning of the meeting, I wore a gray blazer I had bought for job interviews years earlier. I told myself that was not symbolic. It probably was. My father called while I was making coffee. "You going in today?" "Yes." "Remember, dates. Dates, sources, approvals, beneficiaries. That's my girl." I had to sit down for a second after he said that. At 8:40, I parked in the far row because I needed the walk. The building looked ordinary. Trucks at the loading dock. Someone from customer service smoking by the side entrance. A delivery driver arguing with the buzzer. It bothered me that a day that big could look like any other day from the outside. Magnolia was already set up when I arrived. Nadine sat at the far end. Paul sat beside her. Claire and Ethan had laptops open. The CFO, Daniel Price, was there in person, which told me the company wanted this controlled. Priya sat against the wall, not at the table, with a notebook in her lap. Ev was not there. She had refused. "I'm retiring in 8 business days," she told me. "I've had enough theater. Tell me how his face looks later." Victor arrived at 9:12. He was supposed to arrive at 9. I am convinced the lateness was intentional. One more power move. One more attempt to make the room wait. He opened the door without knocking, saw me, and stopped for half a beat. Then he smiled. "Well," he said, "this explains the guest list." Paul gestured to the chair across from the screen. "Victor, please sit down." Victor sat, set his coffee on the table, and placed his phone face down beside it. He did not look worried. Not yet. He looked annoyed, which was different. Annoyed meant he still believed this was an inconvenience he could manage. Daniel, the CFO, opened the meeting. "Victor, this meeting is to review findings from the compensation and vendor payment investigation. You'll have an opportunity to respond. We ask that you let the team complete the summary before commenting." Victor leaned back. "Happy to clear up whatever confusion has been created." There was that word. Confusion. Not theft. Not shortfalls. Confusion. Claire started with the bonus pool. Her voice was even. She did not accuse. She displayed the written plan, the eligible margin, the calculated pool, the approved pool, and the payout file for Q1, then Q4, then Q3, then Q2. 4 quarters. Same structure. Calculated amount higher than payout. No approved support for the variance. Post-approval changes tied to regional review. Victor interrupted on the second slide. "Those are discretionary pools." Claire did not look at him. The written plan identifies discretionary adjustments as requiring documented approval. We did not locate support for these adjustments. "Then you didn't look in the right place." Paul said, "Victor, you'll have time to respond after the summary." Victor lifted both hands, palms out. "Fine, continue." The next slides moved from pools to accounts. H-7714, H-7720, H-7728, H-7731, H-7744. Claire showed creation dates, creator IDs, account notes, sales reclassifications, and referral treatment flags. Ethan took over for the AP side. He showed vendor setup for VJM Consulting LLC, W-9 on file, payment dates, invoice descriptions, and amounts. The first invoice description read, Regional Referral Advisory, North Star. Dana's account. Victor's expression shifted, but only slightly. A tightening around the eyes. A little less drumming of the pen. Ethan clicked to the next slide. VJM Consulting LLC, registered organizer, Caleb Rusk. Public records showing Caleb Rusk married to Marissa Morrow Rusk. Emergency contact record from Victor's employee file listing Marissa Rusk as sister. That was when the pen stopped completely. The room got very quiet. Even the air conditioner seemed to lower its voice. Victor looked at the screen, then at Ethan, then at Paul. "You pulled my employee file?" Paul said. "We reviewed conflict disclosures and related records. Marissa has nothing to do with this." No one had said she did. That was the first crack. Claire continued. "We found no evidence of services provided by VJM Consulting related to the accounts listed. We found multiple instances where sales activity managed by Hartwell employees was reclassified to house accounts associated with external referral payments. We also found related reductions in employee commission and bonus pools." Victor sat forward. "That's not accurate," Daniel said. "Then explain it." Victor opened his mouth, then closed it. He looked at the slide again. For months, he had told everyone the numbers were too tangled to follow. He had relied on that. Compensation plans are confusing. House accounts are boring. Referral payments live in another system. Payroll doesn't see CRM. Sales reps don't see AP. AP doesn't know who built a customer relationship. If every person only sees one slice, a greedy person can move money between slices and call anyone who notices confused. But now, all the slices were on one screen. Victor tried the strategy I expected. "These were regional strategic relationships," he said. "Some accounts require director-level support that reps don't see. VJM provided market intelligence and introductions." Claire clicked once. The next slide showed requests for documentation sent to VJM's listed email, to Caleb Rusk, and to Victor. No response from VJM. No contracts beyond a one-page referral agreement approved by Victor. No deliverables, no meeting notes, no introduction emails. No evidence North Star, Charter One, or the other customers had been introduced by an external party. Then Claire clicked again. Customer statements. North Star's procurement manager had confirmed in writing that their relationship was managed by Dana Ortiz and that they had never heard of VJM Consulting. Charter One's facilities director confirmed Marcus Bell had handled the furniture deal from first quote through installation. 2 other customers said the same. No VJM, no broker, no referral. Victor's jaw moved like he was chewing something. "Customers don't always know what happens behind the scenes," he said. Ethan clicked again. This slide showed email metadata. Victor instructing Marcy to route account classification changes. Victor approving VJM invoices. Victor telling Dana to leave North Star classification to him. Victor telling Marcus his inability to understand variable compensation did not create an emergency. Victor telling me the model was above my pay grade. There it was. My line. Not my line, really. His. Seeing it on a slide did something to the room. Before that, the meeting was numbers. Serious numbers, but numbers. That sentence made the contempt visible. It showed the mechanism of concealment in plain English. He wasn't just adjusting accounts. He was telling the people closest to the truth that they were not allowed to understand it. Victor looked at me then. Not a quick glance. A full look. For the first time since I had known him, there was no performance in his face. No radio host warmth. No executive impatience. Just calculation, fast and desperate, behind his eyes. He was trying to figure out how much of the slide had come from me, the note, the export, the approval packet, the emails, the house account report. He had thought removing my access erased me from the process. He had thought the clean numbers lived only in systems he could muddy. Then Claire said, "The earliest clean reconstruction came from archived exports retained by sales operations before access removal." Victor's eyes stayed on mine. That was the understanding moment. Not the firing, not the referral to authorities. That came later. The real moment was his face changing as he realized the analyst he had dismissed as back office had kept the only version of the data that had not passed through his hands. He looked down at the table. His coffee was untouched. A thin ring of condensation had formed around the cup. His phone buzzed once and he did not move to check it. Paul asked, "Victor, do you dispute that these exports predate the payout modifications?" Victor said nothing. Paul waited. "Victor?" He cleared his throat. "I would need to review the source." Claire said, "The source files are preserved. Hash values were captured during intake. System metadata confirms creation dates." I watched his throat move. That little swallow did more than any confession could have. He understood enough to know he could not call the exports fake. He understood enough to know the files existed before the write-up, before the access removal, before the laptop review. He understood the timeline was not just about money. It was about what he did when someone noticed. Nadine spoke for the first time in a while. We also reviewed subsequent actions involving Lena's access, duties, and disciplinary memo. Those actions occurred after her documented request for adjustment support and before the investigation was opened. They are included in our findings. Victor turned toward her. She was outside her role. Nadine's voice stayed flat. Her role included commission reconciliation at the time the source files were created. She was contacting reps about confidential compensation. We found that employees contacted her with payout questions because she had historically performed reconciliation. We found no evidence that she distributed confidential compensation files to unauthorized employees. She kept files, Paul said, under the retention policy. Victor's face flushed. "This is ridiculous. You're letting an analyst drive an investigation she doesn't understand." There it was again. Analyst. Doesn't understand. Claire clicked back to the flowchart. Customer invoice, sales credit, house account, referral approval, a P payment, VJM consulting, related party connection, employee payout reduction. "The investigation is driven by the documents," she said. It was such a simple sentence. The kind of sentence my father would have liked. Victor stared at the screen. I could almost see him looking for the old exits. Make it about tone. Make it about authority. Make it about sales complexity. Make it about Lena overstepping. But every exit had a document in front of it. Dates, sources, approvals, beneficiaries. Daniel, the CFO, leaned forward. "Victor, did you disclose any relationship between yourself, your family, and VJM Consulting?" Victor said, "It's not my company." That wasn't the question. My brother-in-law has business interests. That's not illegal. Did you disclose the relationship? Victor looked at Paul. I want counsel before answering anything else. The room shifted. It was not dramatic. No one gasped. No one slammed a folder. But everybody understood the meeting had crossed a line. He was no longer clearing up confusion. He was protecting himself. Paul nodded. That is your right. For employment purposes, we will proceed based on the findings available. Victor looked back at me one more time. I did not smile. I did not raise an eyebrow. I did not say, above my pay grade, even though every petty molecule in my body wanted to. I just looked at him and let the silence do what my words would have ruined. But Daniel said it for me, in a way. He looked at the slide and said, "It appears the pay grade was not the issue. The records were." Victor's face went still. That was the moment I will remember longer than the firing. Not because Daniel's line was clever. It wasn't. It was almost clumsy. But it landed because Victor understood it. He understood that the thing he had mocked was the thing that had beaten him. Not my title, not my personality, the record. Paul slid a letter across the table. Termination for cause, effective immediately. The company would seek restitution for improper payments and underpaid compensation, subject to legal proceedings. The matter had been referred to outside authorities for review. Victor was instructed to return company property, preserve documents, and direct further communication through counsel. Victor did not pick up the letter at first. His phone buzzed again. This time he flipped it over. I saw the screen light up with Marcy's name before he turned it back down. For one strange second, I thought about how many times Marcy had taken calls for him, rescheduled meetings for him, softened his edges for other people. Now she was probably sitting at her desk watching his office door, waiting to find out whether her own job had been used as cover for his. He picked up the letter with 2 fingers. "You're making a mistake," he said. Daniel's voice was tired. "No, Victor. We already did that. We trusted you." That hit him. I saw it. A small flinch around the eyes. Not remorse. Exactly. I don't know if Victor was capable of remorse in that room, but recognition, yes. He recognized that the company was no longer worried about losing him. It was worried about explaining why it had believed him for so long. Security did not drag him out. That only happens in movies and very bad workplaces. Paul walked with him to his office. Daniel followed. Victor was allowed to collect personal items under supervision. Through the glass wall, the sales floor watched without watching. People typed on keyboards that were not typing anything. Phones rang too loudly. Someone's printer jammed and beeped until Alicia got up and slapped the button. Victor packed a framed photo, 2 awards, a pair of dress shoes he kept under his credenza, and the fancy coffee machine he had brought from home, so he would not have to drink break room coffee with the rest of us. The nameplate stayed on the wall until facilities removed it that afternoon. When he walked out, he did not look at the sales floor. He looked straight ahead, carrying 1 banker box. The box had vendor files printed on the side because someone had reused an old accounting box, I noticed. So did Ev, who had come downstairs despite refusing the theater. She stood next to me by the copier as he passed. Under her breath, she said, "Well, that's tidy." I had to bite the inside of my cheek. The aftermath took months, not minutes. That is another thing revenge stories compress. The satisfying moment is 1 meeting, 1 letter, 1 face realizing the trap has closed. The actual cleanup is payroll tickets, amended statements, awkward apologies, and people deciding whether to stay at a company that let a director steal from them. Hartwell recalculated 3 years of affected compensation. Current employees received corrected payments with interest. Former employees were contacted through last known addresses. Some checks came back undeliverable, and payroll had to track people down through tax records and LinkedIn. My corrected amount was $5,913 before taxes. Marcus received more than $11,000. Dana's correction was large enough that she sat in her car and cried before driving home, then took her husband and kids to the steakhouse she had skipped on their anniversary because money had been tight. Alicia's support bonus correction covered the daycare balance she had been carrying on a credit card. The total employee restitution ended up a little over $181,000. The company also pursued Victor and VJM Consulting for improper vendor payments, investigation costs, and related damages. I was not privy to every legal detail, but I know a civil demand went out, and I know the company's insurers got involved. I know the state labor agency opened a wage-related inquiry. I know tax authorities received amended filings and a referral packet. I know a local investigator called me once to confirm the timeline of the original exports, and my hands shook so badly afterward that I had to sit outside for 10 minutes. Victor did not come back. His LinkedIn went quiet for a while, then changed to consultant with no company attached. For months, rumors floated through the industry. Some said he had settled. Some said charges were coming. Some said he was blaming the whole thing on his brother-in-law. I stopped chasing updates because at a certain point, his life was no longer my spreadsheet. Marcy kept her job. The investigation found she had processed what Victor directed but had not benefited and had preserved emails when asked. She moved under Priya and became, almost overnight, allergic to undocumented approvals. If a manager asked her to route something without backup, she would say, "Send the support first," in a tone that made grown salespeople behave. Priya also stayed. She apologized to me privately for not stopping the write-up. I told her I understood. That was true, but incomplete. Understanding something does not erase how it felt. Over time, we found a working trust again, quieter than before, but more honest. Ev retired 8 business days after Victor was fired, exactly as scheduled. At her retirement lunch, Daniel gave a speech about institutional knowledge, which was the executive safe way of saying she had saved the company from itself. Ev accepted a crystal bowl she clearly did not want, then hugged me in the hallway afterward. "You did good work," she said. From Ev, that was a parade. I stayed at Hartwell for another year. People ask why, when something like that happens. The honest answer is that I needed the health insurance, my father still had appointments, and leaving immediately would have made Victor the author of one more chapter of my life. So I stayed long enough to help rebuild the process. Finance created a locked monthly archive for commission exports. House account changes required 2 approvals and a reason code. External referral vendors had to go through conflict screening. Bonus pool adjustments showed on employee statements with plain language descriptions. Sales ops got read-only access that regional directors could not remove without finance approval. The first quarter under the new controls, the support bonus pool tied to the penny. I printed the reconciliation, not because I needed paper, but because I wanted to hold it. Priya saw me at the printer and smiled. "Frame it?" "Don't tempt me." Marcus walked by and said, "Above your pay grade?" I said, "Apparently not." That became the joke, but only among people who had earned it. Eventually, I took a job with a different company as a compensation systems manager. Better title, better pay, fewer glass offices. During my interview, the VP asked why I was leaving Hartwell, and I gave the professional version. I said I had helped the company through a compensation controls review and wanted to build cleaner systems somewhere growing. That was true. It was also the kind of answer that leaves out the part where your boss tried to scare you into deleting the only clean copy. On my last day, I packed my desk into one small box. Not a banker box. I refused the poetry of that. Alicia brought cupcakes. Marcus gave me a coffee mug that said "Reconcile this," which was ugly and perfect. Priya wrote me a recommendation that used the words integrity and rigor, which made me cry in the parking lot where I had once almost decided to give up. Before I left, I stopped by the archive folder one last time. The company-owned files stayed with the company, as they should. But I looked at the directory names and remembered the nights behind each one. Q1 questions, approval logs, house account export, VJM public records, timeline. They were not glamorous. They were not dramatic. They were just records. kept when someone powerful counted on everyone else being too tired or too intimidated to keep them. My father asked me later if revenge felt good. I thought about it for a while. Not exactly, I said, but the correction did. He nodded like that was the right answer. The last ironic detail came 6 months after I left. Dana texted me a photo from a regional sales conference. Hartwell had a slide up during a training session on compensation controls. At the bottom, in small font, was a new policy line. All bonus pool adjustments require documented support available to sales operations. Sales operations, not regional leadership, not director discretion. Sales operations. Dana's text said, "Look who is above whose pay grade now." I laughed so hard my cat ran out of the room. Then I saved the photo because of course I did.